Call to order the Sparks City Council meeting of Monday, May 12, 2014, with a roll call, please.
Mayor Martini.
Here. Council
members Ratty. Here. Lawson.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Kerrigan. Absent. Schmidt.
Here.
City Attorney Adams.
Here.
Quorum. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we begin the invocation, I'd like to just make a quick announcement. We lost a friend. The City of Sparks lost a friend on May 4th, Carmen Ferris, who worked with the city quite a bit on the Sparks Citizens Advisory Committee for many, many years. She was a very good friend of Sparks and worked very hard, so I'd like to have a quick moment of silence for Carmen, please. Thank you. Carmen was small in stature, but had a big heart. She was a very nice lady. Okay, if you'd all stand for the, well, no, we don't have an invocation, so if you'll all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Lawson, would you lead us?
Yeah, please join me in the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next is comments from the public. I have several cards. If you want to speak under comments from the public, please fill out one of these cards and we'll get you on the agenda. First, we have Ron King. Is Ron here? Yep. Come on down, Ron. Do you have a microphone for Ron? We got a handheld. We got a handheld for you.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me back. I've got a couple of non-agenda items I'd like to speak to. Last year, sometime, I don't remember exactly when, I requested the City of Sparks investigate having it become a quiet zone for railway traffic. I printed out the appropriate CFRs for it, and I gave the clerk copies for each and every one of you. So if you want to review those and maybe make a decision at some other date, I'd be happy to speak on it again then. The other non-agenda item is related in that in January of this year, the National Transportation Safety Board issued a safety warning concerning certain tanker rail vehicles that were exploding when carrying certain products. And I'm concerned that the NTSB will not be taking steps necessary to ensure the safety of our populace here. There are quite a few number of residential housing and businesses along the rail line. And I'm thinking that we need to do something more than what the NTSB can do to safeguard our property. Washoe County doesn't have any specific regulatory agency that covers it. The state of Nevada, the PUC has authority over the rail system, but it seems to be mostly the motor vehicle traffic railway interfaces that they regulate. The NDOT doesn't have anything other than a similar motor vehicle rail system interface safety oversight. So I printed out a proposed resolution that you might look at to see if it aligns with your views. A starting place for you to look at, see if it works for you. And it might be possible to pass that resolution and enforce it. I have a couple of agenda items. Briefly, the Last Chance Joe, I fully support the council funding and removal and replacement of it at a different location. And I would personally be willing to make a monthly contribution to offset the cost of that, and suggest that we develop a nonprofit to raise funds for that purpose. Just like the city of San Francisco did with their Save the Cable Cars issue. And let me remind myself of my fourth issue. Now, never mind. I'll speak on it if you allow me
you
later.
can speak on it when the agenda, you got 6.4, I think, Ron, you wanted to speak of 6.3 and 6.4, so you can speak on those when you come up. Okay, thank you. Next, we have Scott Carey. Welcome, Scott.
Good afternoon, Mayor Martini, members of the City Council. For the record, I'm Scott Carey. I'm the Events and Community Relations Manager for Nevada 150. We're the group tasked with celebrating Nevada's sesquicentennial. Very quickly, I just wanted to bring to the Council's attention the latest edition of Nevada Magazine. In the magazine, which is out on newsstands now, features a great feature article about the history of Sparks. And just want to thank the folks at Nevada Magazine for that. And that's all I had. Thanks.
Thanks, Scott. Next I have Ron. Is it Ron Bogle? Ron? Can't read the name. Ron?
Must be him.
Oh, there it is. Ron McGee. Okay, I'm sorry, Ron. Come on down.
Ron McGee, 550 North McCarran, 245. Recovering disabled vet, really football injury, but I had bad medication at the hospital like 14 months ago and I was in a coma, so I'm recovering. My speech is a little off and my short-term memory's bad, so it's caused some problems, but I'm getting better. I just want to hit on a couple things. I usually talk on 3 things in 3 minutes. One, it took me 6 months to get the roundabout crosswalks painted. Bold lettering, bold print all the way around there. That's where the little girl got hit a couple years ago. I don't know why that was red clay crosswalks. We'll leave it at that. Okay, since I was there at that little area, I lived on the other side of the marina, and I had crosswalks put in there a couple years ago. There was not one crosswalk on Harbor Cove for the kids or the drunks from the bar. So I had that put in a week. So this stuff can be done. The latest I'm dealing with is when I go down to the marina and I see those trucks hung up on that roundabout, I think there's something wrong. And my friend from L.A. that delivers Harleys, he's a really good driver. He has the newest, longest, biggest truck, and he made it around it. So it's not impossible. But I was there about 2 weeks ago, and there's another one hung up there, and it didn't come out of the truck stop, which they do have a sign inside the parking lot. Not too big a sign, about this big, so there's no right turn. So I talked to the manager, Kenneth Theus, and they're going to update the sign and put flashing LED battery pack lights around it. But if that don't work, I want a sign put right directly across the street with the X thing, no right turn. You do that on a lot of the other stuff, like the bike path. So I'll let it go at that. But this Theus guy was pretty good. Something positive, the mayors, Cashel and Gino, were both at the senior center, which they should come more often. I have a real bad thing again with Sparks Senior Center. They talk about service bus service. They don't even have bus service to the senior center. And that should be changed. Whoever has that should get that changed in a week. If not, I will. And the bus stop is there. I'll call Sparks High School. They'll come over and paint it. So that could be fixed. And the marking around the front of the center is all red. It's supposed to be yellow. You're supposed to have 50 foot of yellow there for unloading and loading people. Many people drop off and pick up there. The handicap vans can do it in red, but otherwise they're not supposed to. See how much of my time I'm doing. The latest thing, I just want to do a little moment that we're going to do something about our soldier that's been missing for 35 years from Sun Valley. He was born in 648. He disappeared in 1980 in Sun Valley. His name is George Benson Webster. He was a double Bronze Star winner. I think he's pretty much a Marine. Only Marines or Army can get a Bronze Star, and he had 2 of them. They did find him a year ago last August, his remains. They didn't know who it was, in Virginia Highlands in a septic tank. And through DNA and a lot of stuff, they found out who he was. So that's a missing soldier that we found, just the wrong way. He could have been in South America. He didn't really have to be dead. So I'm working with the sheriff in BC and the writer from the article, the newspaper, and we're going to do a follow-up with more facts. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron. Frank Istris?
I don't have anything at this time. Judy was kind enough to answer some questions for me before the meeting, so
You're good?
I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Frank.
You're welcome.
Anyone else under public comment? Okay, moving on to approval of the agenda. Taking things out of order, we have, I'd like to do something special here. 6.2 has to do with our contract with Carrera, Nevada. And then we have 2 items, 610, 611, which are about the legislature. So I'd like to take all 3 of those at the same time, 6.2 and then 610, 611. To get those out of the way, because Carrera, Nevada has to leave for airplane to Las Vegas, so we want to get those done as quickly as we can. So,
You want those first, you know?
well, we'll do them right after just in order after 6.2 is fine. Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda with the change of bringing 610, 611 under 6.2 or following 6.2.
Okay. Do I have a second? Mr. Smith?
Second.
Moved by Councilman Schmidt, seconded by Councilman Smith to approve the agenda as amended. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Go ahead, display, please. Passed unanimously with those present. 3.1, consideration and possible approval of minutes of the regular Sparks City Council meeting of April 28, 2014. Any questions, omissions, corrections, deletions? Ms. Ratty?
Approve the minutes as presented?
Mr. Schmidt?
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Ratty, seconded by Councilman Schmidt to approve the minutes of April 28th meeting. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. 4.1, presentation on the annual Kids Free Fishing Day by the Sparks Rotary. Welcome, gentlemen. Come on up. Just give your names for the record and let her rip.
My name is Randy Riscati.
Sparks Rotary.
Ryan Gilbrecht with Sparks Rotary and the chair of the Fishing Day this year.
Don Welsh with Sparks Rotary, past chairman.
You don't need a microphone.
No, and I'm not feeling well. Don't mess with me, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank the city of Sparks and Sparks Park and Recreation. About 14 years ago, you brought us this wonderful event. So we've had the opportunity. We're going to show you a quick video to let all our guests and council see what a couple thousand fishing poles look like when they're ready to give out. But we've had about 40,000 kids come through that program. And it's just a wonderful thing that the city does. Tracy Dominguez, and we partner up with Fish and Game and Sparks Rotary. I want to mention, too, there's a group out there called Nevada Bighorns Unlimited that's given us over $100,000 to buy these poles. They're not cheap, and so we really appreciate the support. So we're just here to say thank you very much, give you an update. We're planning this event this year. It's always the second Saturday in June, so June 14th, we'd like to invite everybody out. We need as much help as we can. We put the fish in net at a netted area about 300 yards long, and they put your elbow to elbow. The problem with Fish and Game, they have not taught the fish to swim directly in once they're caught. So you can imagine we got 8 poles tangled, and the kids are all wondering why their buddies are catching fish. So we need people out there cutting lines, putting new hooks on, and getting back in the water. Come out early, you can stay an hour, you can stay all day. We're there from about 7 to 11. We're pretty prompt with that, but we have another event that we started 2 years ago for kids with special needs. So that's the Friday before the Saturday. It's on the 13th from 10 to 2. Really cool event. So let's see the video. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Questions, comments? Mr. Lawson?
Well,
Oh, I'm sorry.
having been the past chair of this event for the last 2 years, still one of my favorite things in the world to do, and I love to see those kids smile. In the Special Needs Day we started 2 years ago, as Don said, and if you want to put a smile on your face, come out to that event just to watch these people fish, and it's the most amazing thing I've seen, especially when they catch them. You know, the excitement and the joy, it's quite wonderful. So thank you.
Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you very much. Great event, and congratulations on you for the time you spent.
Yeah, it's great. It's Ed's right. It's a wonderful event. A lot of kids show up, and it's nobody else around does this, I don't think, and it's just awesome. Anything to say there, gentlemen? Anything? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for bringing us with the update, and good luck again this year. Hopefully the fish will be breathing, okay?
Oh, they're back.
They're back.
Okay, let's move on to 4.2, presentation on the 2013 Golden Eagle Regional Park and Annual Report. Welcome.
Thank you.
How are you, sir?
I'm good. Mr. Mayor, Council, Tony Paley, Recreation Supervisor. I'm going to show you the annual report for 2013 for the Golden Eagle Regional Park. As you well know, our park is heavily utilized 12 months of the year. It's crazy out there. The softball fields are booked solid with tournaments on weekends from February through November with teams as far as away as Alaska and Florida. We generated an estimated $20.9 million in economic impact from tournaments and event visitors. We brought over 1,091 visiting teams to Sparks, equating to over 32,000 room nights. And we hosted Triple Crown Sports 18 Under Gold National Championship with 5 hours of nationally televised live coverage on CBS Sports Network, as well as 9 other tournaments with over 50 teams participating. The formula to come up to the $20.9 million, their estimates are a combination of data received from the RSCBA, Athletic Business Magazine, Triple Crown Sports, Senior Softball USA, ASA USA Softball, and the National Association of Sports Commissioners. We also track the number of teams and players and where they come from every tournament on reports from staff. In 2013 at Golden Eagle, we also added 2 additional youth baseball fields that have ADA accessibility, as well as a new snack bar and restrooms. This has made it able for us to add additional teams to some of these events. We have diversified the events in the last couple years to include weddings, 5 and 10K trail runs, men and women's semi-pro football teams, high school lacrosse, and the filming of a movie. This year we're working with the RSCVA to hopefully bring a Quidditch tournament this coming fall. For those of you that don't know, it's from Harry Potter. It's where they fly around on brooms, but they're actually not going to fly. They run around on them. It's a big college event that they've started playing Quidditch, and they want to bring one of their Western Nationals to Golden Eagle this fall. Golden Eagle is also home to over 460 local adult softball and kickball teams that are now participating 11 months of the year. The next page on tournaments, those are just some of the examples of our larger events that have been coming to Golden Eagle since it's been built. Triple Crown Sports has been one of the real big highlights, as well as Senior Softball USA. These events are multiple days. Senior Softball USA is 9 days of games. Last year they had 205 teams. They expect to have the same number this year. Our number of events since we built the complex is almost doubled. We were down a couple from the year before, but that's because we brought in larger national and regional events and replaced some of the smaller local events. This is a listing of all the tournaments and events that went out at Golden Eagle last year. 1,733 total teams, 4,920 games, and 1,091 teams visiting the area. This report is only using spending by visitors to Sparks for this economic impact report. Expenditures by tournament participants who reside in or near Sparks are not included in the calculations because they would likely be spending their money here anyway. The economic report also does not calculate the impact of participants in city-sponsored sports leagues that utilize the Golden Eagle. So it doesn't include all the Little League or the Pop Warner or any of that. It's just visiting teams. We hosted 48 tournaments. We also had a total of 568 rentals at Golden Eagle for another $98,000 in rental revenue. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Great report. Tony, can you just give me, again, for public, how many visitors outside the area this generated to the park?
It was 1,091 teams, which equates to, sorry, a lot of numbers. Each adult team comes out to typically 14 players and 6 spectators. The youth teams equate to 14 players, 2 coaches, and 14 spectators.
And I guess my question is, in the scope of what we do all across northern Nevada in regards to tourism, where does this park fit into the events that we do as far as number of people we draw here? Is there anything else in the area that draw this many people as a place to come to?
There's other venues. I could compare it to the convention center for the large volleyball tournaments, or Memorial Day weekend is bringing in the Jam On It basketball tournament. But they don't bring in the sports on a consistent basis where we're out there scheduled from February 1st all the way through the end of November. They're only bringing in a handful throughout the year where we're having events continual all year long.
And I think that that's worth making sure that the RSCVA is very much aware of what we're doing out there and how this fits in. And the marketing we do for the area, this facility cannot be not mentioned very high in the column of things. And I'd like to see Park and Mike Kerrigan, Tracy and Mike get together and see what we can do to make sure that the RSCVA is, we have these rolling things on TV at the baggage claim. Every ball player is picking up their baggage and luggage. They need to know how important this facility is to what their entire industry is doing, much less the average visitor that's coming out here, because that's not on the average visitor that comes here circuit to go out there and see what's going on, and I think it should be. So, good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Eddy.
Well,
my second chance to see it, and it's just impressive every time it's stunning how many numbers are going through that park. And so first of all, I want to thank you in particular and the Parks and Recreation team for the labor and intensity of activity. And then I think you're being humble and not sharing the information about the conference that you were able to take a lead on recruiting to our area. So would you please share about that?
Thank you. I've been the volunteer state commissioner for the Nevada Amateur Softball Association for 14 years. And we have a national council meeting that we were able to bid at the Nugget, and it will be coming here in November. And it's approximately 3,000 room nights that we'll be having the convention at the Nugget in November. So it is a big deal for us to get it in Sparks, and I'm happy to host it. And Mayor Martini, we'd actually like you to speak at the opening ceremony for it at the Nugget, and I'll give you more information to see if you're available for that. But we are very excited about that conference. It's the one time ASA USA, which is the national governing body of softball, gets together once a year, and for us to bring it here to Sparks is a pretty big deal. So thank you for mentioning that.
You bet. Thank you.
Great. You can definitely count on me being there. I'd love to do that. That's wonderful. You know, as we approved this park a long time ago, I don't think anybody realized what an asset to this, not only to the city, but to this whole valley that park was going to be. I don't know that anybody realized the impact that it was going to have as far as bringing people here. I know I had no clue until it started to happen, and it's just unbelievable. The people and the word gets out, and more people come and more people come. As far as New York City, I had, every once in a while I'll get a letter from teams that came here and just love it and want to come back and say it's the best place they've ever played softball in. So, again, I don't know that anybody ever realized what kind of an asset this was going to be to the city in northern Nevada.
I agree.
Roger Matt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Just don't submit it to the council or anybody to change the name to the Reno Tahoe Regional Park. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else, comments? Okay, proclamation Kids to Parks Day. Anybody here to receive this? Tracy? Okay, I'll go ahead and read it. Proclamation. Whereas May 17, 2014 is the fourth Kids to Parks Day organized and launched by the National Park Trust. And whereas Kids to Parks Day empowers kids and encourages families to get outdoors and visit America's parks. And whereas it is important to introduce a new generation to our nation's parks because of the decline in park attendance over the last decades. And whereas we should encourage children to lead a more active lifestyle to combat the issues of childhood obesity, diabetes, mellitus, hypertension, and hypercholesterolemia. Thanks for putting that one in there. And whereas Kids to Parks Day is open to all children and adults across the country to encourage a large and diverse group of participants. And whereas Kids to Parks Day will broaden children's appreciation for nature and outdoors. And now, therefore, I, Gino R. Martini, Mayor of the City of Sparks, Nevada, do hereby proclaim May 17th as Kids to Parks Day, and we urge residents of Sparks to take time on May 17, 2014 to take the children in their lives to a neighborhood, state, or national park. Thank you. You got to say that name too, Tracy. Say a couple words.
Thank you, Mayor Martini and council members. Tracy Dominguez, Parks and Recreation Director. We'll be seeing a little bit more of this type of activity come July being Parks and Recreation Month. So we'll be doing a lot of recognition for some of our facilities and Get Out and Play initiative, as well as volunteer recognition. So this is just the start. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tracy, for all you do. Appreciate it. Okay, let's move on to consent items, 5.1 through 5.5. Anybody want to pull a consent item? Ms. Ratty?
Make a motion to approve consent agenda item 5.1 through 5.5.
Do you have a second, Mr. Schmidt?
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Ratty, seconded by Councilman Schmidt to approve 5.1 through 5.5. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. So if you were here for anything, license or anything, I think, Red, you were here for one. If you're don't want to stay, you can leave. It's you got your license, you're good to go. But yeah. But if you want to stay and listen, it's okay.
Well, I'd like to, but I'm really happy.
Okay.
Gotta watch the dogs.
Thanks, Red. Thanks for being here.
All the excuses.
Okay, moving on, general business, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of an appointment to the Regional Planning Governing Board for a 3-year term. Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Steve Driscoll, City Manager. For the record, on this item, we have several members that represent us on the Regional Planning and Governing Board. Currently, Mayor Martini, Councilmember Lawson, Councilmember Kerrigan, and then Councilmember Smith acts as an alternate. The term for Mr. Kerrigan is up in June 30th. It's a 3-year term, and he's let us know that he's willing to serve again, and so we're just looking for his approval for one more term.
Okay.
With that, I'll answer questions.
Questions, Mr. Schmidt?
I know what it's like to be nominated for something if you miss a meeting. So I need to just make sure that Mr. Kerrigan has agreed to this.
He agreed with the mayor previously, and he did confirm with me that he did that because he knew we need witnesses.
And I'll be more than happy to make a motion to approve item 6.1 as outlined by staff.
Mr. Smith?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Schmidt, seconded by Mr. Smith to approve 6.1 as outlined by staff. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passed unanimously. 6.2, discussion and possible approval of a contract with Carrera Nevada LLC for state lobbying services in the amount of $61,500, not to exceed $69,500. Mr. Mayberry.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, council members, Mr. Driscoll, Mr. Adams. Adam Mayberry, Community Relations Manager. For the record. Forgive the little device in my left ear. It helps me hear better. I'm not listening to a sports cast or any music, so I'm waiting.
Yeah, right.
So item 6.2, and Mr. Mayor, thank you for allowing us to hear item 6.10 and 6.11 following item 6.2. Item 6.2 is possible approval of a contract for Carrera Nevada for lobbying services. Behind me is Rocky Fenseth, the CEO, the president of Carrera Nevada. Also with us is Jenny Reese, who's a very valuable member of the Carrera Nevada team as well. In the past, the city has utilized a contract council to support and assist the city's legislative functions during the Nevada legislative session. As recent as the 2013 legislative session, the city retained and successfully utilized Carrera Nevada. The contract before the council today covers a time period of July 2014 through June 2015 in the amount of $61,500, not to exceed $69,500, and I'll cover that in a moment. The contract covers the following items: lobbying on behalf of the city on state legislative matters. This includes supporting and building upon relationships with key legislators, as well as engaging in the day-to-day operations of state legislative activities on behalf of the city, coordinating and attending meetings between city officials and state leaders, tracking and monitoring key legislation on behalf of the city, providing strategic guidance on legislative issues impacting the city, providing weekly communications on legislative issues and events that occurred during the week of the session, and attending weekly legislative team meetings, advising the city's government affairs team on matters concerning interim committee, working on local government issues for the upcoming session. And Carrera will primarily engage on issues that solely impact the city's bottom line and the citizenry of Sparks. They have over 50 years of experience. They have a proven track record of working hand in hand with the city to strategically position us legislatively and address the needs of our citizens. Also want to point out that Carrera has been very gracious with their time during the interim sessions when we have not been under contract. The legislative team, led by Mayor Martini and Councilwoman Councilwoman Ratty, along with the manager, have reviewed and support the proposed agreement. In addition, the agreement includes an optional clause that applies specifically to lobbying issues during the session. The contract clause has to be agreed upon by both parties, and it really involves focusing in on and proactively working legislation that's significant and specific to the city, which is not immediately identified in the lead up to the session. So an example of that would be, for instance, Senate Bill 509. This was in the 2000 legislative session, which addressed the expiring hotel room tax in Sparks. That was an issue that came up after the session started, and Carrera played a significant role in ensuring that bill made it through the process and was signed by the governor, which allowed the city to continue to keep nearly $500,000 a year in room tax geared toward Victorian Square. They had to scramble, find a bill sponsor, educate and work with legislators on the issue, work with the governor, ensure it would not veto the bill, schedule meetings with committee chairs, etc. But again, that optional clause, it would increase by additional $2,000 per month, beginning at the month that the optional clause was executed. And again, for it to have to kick in, both the legislative team as well as Carrera would have to agree on that threshold. And so it's very likely that we may never even get to that point. But that is the contract before us. I'll be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Ms. Reddy?
I'll just say, not a question but a comment, I think that the strategy that we put together with Carrera Nevada last time worked extraordinarily well. And I think the new clause, which allows for those surprises, if you will, that weren't anticipated in our legislative platform, and I think the room tax last time is a perfect example. It's rare, but occasionally there will be something that is so targeted on Sparks that's not contemplated in our platform where we really do need the extra help, and with $500,000 a year in return, it's definitely worth the effort. So I think it's fair to both parties to have that ability to jump in should we need it. So if doesn't sound like there's any questions, so I'll go ahead and make a motion to move to approve the contract with Carrera Nevada for state legislative and lobbying services in the amount of $61,500, not to exceed $69,500.
Mr. Schmidt?
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Ratty, seconded by Councilman Schmidt to approve 6.2. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Just a comment from me, too. I think it's, I've been doing this pretty long time with the legislative things that we've done, and it's worked better the last couple times than it's ever worked in the past. I mean, it's been smoother, and we haven't had to sit down there for hours and hours upon hours, day after day, and we go down when we need to go down. We don't go down if we don't need to go down. So I appreciate Carrera Nevada and all the work that they do, because it's been the best process we've ever used for dealing with the legislature. So I appreciate that. Okay, let's move to 6.10. Go ahead, Adam.
Okay, thank you. Is this better? Okay. Apparently we're getting some feedback from the microphone on this thing for the deaf bald guy, so I apologize. Item 6.10 is really an opportunity for this body to discuss publicly and possibly approve any potential bill draft requests that may be on your mind. As you know, the City of Sparks has had opportunities to submit one. Just to trigger your memory, some recent BDR activity for the City of Sparks 2013 session, no BDR was utilized. 2011 session, the BDR was contingent upon an advisory question for public safety, which failed to pass. The 2009 session, Assembly Bill 98 was introduced on behalf of the city that would have allowed the city to administer its own hotel room tax. Bill had a hearing before the Assembly Committee on Taxation, but went no further. Just kind of gives you a kind of a broad, high-level view of some of the BDRs we brought forward. So the Nevada League of Cities and Municipalities is in the early stages of developing its topics. They have an opportunity to submit up to 5. The mayor and the legislative team will be part of that discussion that's starting now. Also, the city's charter committee convened earlier this year and has completed its business. Working closely with Mr. Adams' staff, the charter committee did in fact adopt proposed changes to the charter that are based on the Supreme Court ruling. Those changes do need a sponsor. And in most cases, the Charter Committee has sought to find a sponsor on their own, but this is a unusual case because the charter changes here are specific to the day-to-day operations of the city. The committee chairman, Charter Committee Chairman Bob Riviere, has asked that the council consider adopting the charter changes as the city's sole BDR. And finally, I also want to remind the council it's not imperative we submit a BDR. In many cases, legislators have sponsored important legislation on our behalf, such as Senate Bill 509, which was the hotel room tax bill we just talked about. And so these conclude my remarks. So we could provide some topics now. I can come back at a later date, or we can take action today.
Questions for Adam? Any suggestions? Mr. Lawson?
Refresh my memory of what the Charter Committee proposed.
Yeah, if I may, I'd like to ask Mr. Adams to jump in on that one, if you could, sir, on the proposed changes to the charter pertaining to the Sparks Municipal Court.
You know, why don't I just get you a full report on that? It'll give you a background on the Supreme Court case and everything else.
That would be good, because that was my next question is, when do we have to submit a BDR by?
September 1st of this year is the deadline.
So we still have time.
We do have time. But there's one reason why I want to have this discussion is that there are some topics we can do a little research and put some language together now. Begin that process. So.
Get it on your mind, thinking about it. If you got something that comes up, we can discuss it at a later date. Anyone else have any suggestions, or just want to pass for now and bring up something in the future? Ms. Ratty?
I do support having it be the Charter Committee's bill. They don't come to us very often to ask that we specifically sponsor it, and in my reading of it is they're all operationalizing the agreements that we made through the court process. So absolutely supportive of waiting to make sure, but hopefully we won't have too many other competing opportunities, because I don't think there's anything in there that is going to be any sort of surprise. We all agreed to the general terms, and I would support that.
Yeah, I think if we get it on the radar screen now, and then we get a report from Mr. Adams in front of us, so we'll know exactly what's the changes are going to be and how they affect everything, then we can still make that decision down the road. Unless there's something else that has anyone else has a burning desire to bring anything else up. Okay. All right, so we don't need any action on that for now. Well, you're going to bring that back to us? Okay, 611, discussion and possible approval of the city's 2015 state legislative platform.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item represents the current state legislative platform and policies on how the city engages in state legislative affairs. The document conveys to legislators and policymakers where the mayor and this body, the city council, stand on unity on important policy issues. The legislative platform also allows the city to respond quickly in support of or opposition to issues that could directly impact the city. The document contains high-level policy issues, some of which are tied to the city's strategic plan that have been utilized fairly effectively since 2006, with some adjustments and tweaks along the way. In April, I provided a document, hard copy, to all of you. I have not received any comments or input. The changes that you have before you are mirror what we used in the 2013 session. We're asking for your formal approval and endorsement once again so that we can begin to proceed with preparing for and advocating on behalf of the city for the upcoming legislative session, which I know is not till 2015, but the time now is to begin to work that. So that's all. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Questions for Mr. Mayberry? Mr. Lawson.
I believe that we said last year that we're allowing the legislative committee to make a decision on the spot if they have to, and then come back, to the council. So we're going to still go down that road, because I think that worked out beautifully for us.
Mr. Lawson, that is correct. We did, back in April 22nd, 2013, we did add some language that provide a little bit more autonomy to the legislative committee to make those decisions, because, as you know, a 120-day session happens fairly quickly.
Very good.
Thank you,
That's all I have.
Mr. Schmidt.
I believe that's only on items that can't be brought up in the next council meeting, correct?
Right.
That was decisions that need to be made right away.
Correct, yes.
Most of those are happening the last 30 days of the session.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I
Good.
that? It's items that aren't covered in the platform. that can't be brought back to the council. So we assume if it's in the platform, it's good, and we're not bringing everything back to the dais, just to avoid that long conversation. But if it's not in the platform and we need a decision and we can bring it back, we will.
Anyone else? Okay, looking for a motion. Ms. Ratty?
Move that the staff adopt the state legislative platform for the 2015 session and direct staff as presented.
Do I have a second? Mr. Lawson?
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Ratty, seconded by Councilman Lawson to approve 6.11. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passed unanimously.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Rocky, Jenny, thanks. Appreciate you being here. Okay, let's move on to 6.3, consideration and possible award of a 2014 curb and gutter sidewalk and pavement replacement, Unit 1, bid number 1314-017, to Q&D Construction, Inc. Who's doing this? Mr. Kaysen, go ahead.
It's kind of hard to see. Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the council. For the record, my name is Brian Kaysen, Acting Capital Projects Manager. I'm here to present the 2014 curb gutter sidewalk and pavement replacement project for Unit 1 to Q&D Construction Incorporated in the amount of $469,436. This project involves the complete replacement of curb gutter, sidewalk, driveway approaches, and asphalt grind and overlay on Russell Way and 17th Street. The existing roadway has deteriorated and is in need of repair. An overlay at this time will repair the roadway in a preventative manner and save the city money by not having to rebuild the road in the future at a much higher cost. This area to be replaced is identified within the CIP project map and master plan for curb gutter and sidewalk replacement. This concludes my presentation, and I will now open it up to any questions you may have.
Questions for Brian? Okay, seeing none, looking for a motion. Ms. Ratty.
Move to award 2014 curb gutter sidewalk and pavement replacement Unit 1 bid number 13/14-017 to Q&D Construction in the amount of $469,436.
Mr. Lawson.
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Ratty, seconded by Councilman Lawson to approve 6.3 as outlined by staff. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Okay, let's move on to 6.4, consideration possible award of a construction contract to Houston Smith Construction in the amount of $59,200 for relocation of the Last Chance Joe to the west side of the C Street parking garage. Mr. Kreutz.
Good afternoon, Mayor Martini, members of the council. For the record, Neil Kreutz, Deputy City Manager of Community Services, for the record. As the mayor introduced the item, this is for the potential relocation of Last Chance Joe from its current and long-term home in front of John Esquaga's Nugget to what would be along the west side of our C Street parking garage. This is coming to you as a result of the new ownership team at the Nugget wanting to go through an exterior remodel. They notified the city that they would be demolishing Last Chance Joe, but did offer up an opportunity that at no cost to them, we could, or a volunteer group could come and get it, take it and relocate it. The point there being as long as it was done at no cost to the Nugget and that we were able to get it out of there as quickly as we could. I think they're shooting for by the middle of June to have it removed. So in seeing that, staff received directions to go out and solicit quotes to see if this was something the city wanted to do. So we did that in the month of April, and on April 17th, we opened two bids. The low bid was for the $59,200 to Houston Smith Construction. This is an unbudgeted, it's an unbudgeted potential expenditure of funds. And in looking at our capital improvements budget for this current fiscal year, we look for underspend on
on projects and see if that might free up some money that we could use to do this. And we have found a source of funds, but it's not one that would come free and clear. The source of funds that we have found inside of the transfer that the council makes from the general fund into the capital plan to fund the city's facilities, we are currently enjoying some savings on the City Hall electrical upgrade project, and we could utilize those savings to pay for this expenditure. However, that comes with a few caveats. The first one being that we're not done with the construction yet. We might run into anticipated or unanticipated cost overruns that would chew into what we are enjoying as savings right now. The second point, and the far larger one, relates to the follow-on project that will come, or is currently planned for City Hall, starting with next fiscal year, and that is the replacement of the HVAC system inside City Hall. We are in design for that retrofit and upgrade right now. We have $1 million budgeted in next year's budget to carry out that work. And we had been looking to any potential savings inside of that capital transfer to go towards that project. Some information that's not in the staff report came from a meeting that we had with our design engineer this morning, where we saw a cost estimate in the $1.25 to $1.4 million range. So it's looking like we are potentially underfunded, and that would, from my perspective, would lend, further stress from staff to perhaps want to save any savings we have to use for that badly needed project. The third thing that I would like to point to is that through this budget process, the one that you've tentatively approved and will finally approve here shortly, we did recommend a reduction in the transfer from the general fund into the capital projects fund, whereas for the last several years you've transferred $1.3 million from the general fund into the capital projects fund. This year that was trimmed, for the year coming up, that was trimmed back to $240,000 in an effort to help the city close a budget gap that we spent the second half of the winter trying to figure out how to fill. And we accomplished that by deferring some needed projects. Essentially, we kicked the can down the road on several projects. So what I'm trying to do here is lay out some black and white information for you to base a decision on. We could do that again. We could, if you would so choose, defer projects down the road, and it would likely come at the cost of the HVAC project, but we could look for other alternatives in our capital plan as well if you wanted to go ahead and award this today. My last point is that we understand from talking to the manager's office and some members of the council that there have been efforts to raise money in the community to accomplish this project, and that those efforts have been unsuccessful. So with that, really what this item boils down to is a single question as to whether or not the city wants to spend $59,200 to relocate Last Chance Joe over to the west side of the parking garage. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that might help with your discussion.
Questions? Julia?
Not so much questions as comments. Wanted to thank Neil and his staff for taking the time on relatively short notice to get us the information that we needed to make a decision, so thank you. Mr. Kreutz has done a fine job of laying out all of the challenges to moving forward on a project like this. I am the person who asked that we at least consider it, and would like to just point out that unfortunately opportunities to do historic preservation typically don't come with a 18-month planning window and the opportunity to get it into a capital improvement project or consider it during a year-long budgeting process. So they come when they come. I did have a conversation with Mr. Gear at the Nugget today and have some good news in that there is a little bit more breathing room. It does look like they're going to start the work on the exterior immediately following the rib cook-off. So we do have a little bit more space. That June deadline is not quite so pressing as it was before. I also would like to perhaps offer a correction. I think it's not quite accurate to say that the fundraising efforts haven't been unsuccessful. More accurate to say that there wasn't enough time to really put together a fundraising proposal and program, given with very little leeway and really difficult to put together a fundraising program when you don't know what the cost is. So certainly moving to this step to have some idea of what we're talking about was helpful. I personally think that, there's lots, that it's important. I think you'll hear from some folks today that want to share their thoughts about it, that these kinds of treasures are worth saving. They're the things that make communities unique. And yes, our budget has been challenging for 5 years, but it's Last Chance Joe's last chance, just to be blatantly obvious about it. And so I would like to give an opportunity for folks to share what they're thinking and then take it from there.
Mr. Lawson.
I'll defer. Let's hear public comment, and then we'll bring it back.
Okay, first of all, I have Mr. Ron King.
I already spoke on that in general public comments.
Okay. Dick Drayling.
Dick Darling, President of the Board, Sparks Heritage Museum. In 1985, a group of Sparks residents sitting around realized that they were losing their heritage. Everything was being torn down and destroyed. They formed the Sparks Heritage Foundation and Museum, and since that time, we have continued to try to protect the history of not only Sparks, but the entire Truckee Meadows. The Last Chance Joe figure is a one-of-a-kind. Everyone has seen it. We can't lose it. It's something we have to protect. Let's not fall into the mode where, well, let's pretend it's some mapes and implode it. Let's take care of these things that we have. It's a treasure, and it needs to be saved. Thank you.
Thanks, Dick. Scott Carey?
Good afternoon again, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. For the record, my name's Scott Carey. I'm the Events and Community Relations Manager for Nevada 150. We're the group tasked by the state to celebrate Nevada's sesquicentennial. I'm here today on behalf of our governing body, the Nevada Sesquicentennial Commission, to speak in support of this proposed project. As our commission believes that the Last Chance Joe relocation project would make a great legacy project for the sesquicentennial celebration. I wanted to just briefly highlight two legacy projects that we've already completed or going to be completed with some other Nevada communities to celebrate the sesquicentennial. The first one is the Lariat Motel sign in Fallon. Last Nevada Day, working with the City of Fallon and the Churchill Arts Council, we lit the historic Lariat Motel sign, which was on US 40 and greeted visitors to the community there. Next month, we'll be celebrating with the City of West Windover the 62nd birthday of Windover Will, which he may or may not be a distant cousin of Last Chance Joe or not. He's 63 feet tall. He's a cowboy, and he greets passengers currently on Interstate 80. The city West Windover, to celebrate the sesquicentennial, is going to be putting a fresh coat of paint on Last Chance Joe, or Windover Will, excuse me, Mr. Mayor. The commission certainly understands the financial situation of the city, the tough decision that the city council has today, trying to fund an unplanned and unbudgeted expenditure for the budget. Our commission believes that the Last Chance Joe statue does have significance to the state of Nevada, and if the council so chooses so today, would make a wonderful addition to the sesquicentennial celebration. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank the City of Sparks on behalf of our commission for all of its support of the celebration. The banner looks great. We certainly appreciated the opportunity to participate in the Christmas parade last year, and we're very much looking forward to celebrating the sesquicentennial along with the Sparks Heritage Museum at the Western Heritage Festival, October 4th in Victorian Square. With that concludes my presentation. Thanks for the opportunity to be here. Be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Scott? And Scott, I have your letter, and we'll enter it into the record officially. So, any questions for Scott? Okay. Scott, thanks for being here. Dr. Richard Simmons?
Mr. Mayor, for the record, my name is Dr. Richard Simmons, and I'm a member of the Board of Trustees of the Sparks Heritage Museum. I'd like to sort of give you an example of the iconic nature of Last Chance Joe. I first saw him in Georgia when I was going to veterinary school in the mid-1960s. Now, to be honest with you, I thought it was Reno at that time. But then when I first visited here as an adult in the mid-1970s, I realized it was Sparks. And that's why I know the difference between Sparks and Reno before I returned here in 1988 for a career change. So he is truly iconic, and I think there are probably people throughout the world that would recognize Last Chance Joe, the visitors who have come and gone. I would also like to propose an alternative to relocation if it's too expensive at this time. Is it possible that the city has a storage facility in which the three, I think it comes in 3 sections, could be stored until perhaps funds could be raised for relocation? I know, like in Vegas, they have a whole yard somewhere where they store some of these old iconic items and hopefully ultimately can be restored. I have no other comments other than to encourage we need to save Last Chance Joe. Be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Will Putnam?
Hello, my name is Bill Durham.
Sorry.
That's okay. The pen wasn't working. So for the past 18, 19 years, I've been preserving the signage all over Nevada, mainly in northern Nevada. I've preserved signs from the Mapes, Herald's Club, Nevada Club, the Buffalo Bar, the Sahara Las Vegas. And this is something that I personally thought was important. I just really liked it. And I think Last Chance Joe is really worth saving. And this is, I understand that a lot of people love Last Chance Joe, but there's other considerations. I think that there can be an economic impact by saving Last Chance Joe. Some of these other preservation efforts, like the Las Vegas Neon Museum and the Sign Museum in Cincinnati, are real tourist draws. And so, and beyond tourist draws, the amount of positive press that the Las Vegas Neon Museum gets is remarkable. In our community, I put together the Light Circus show that was at the Nevada Museum of Art in 2012, 2013, and it was the largest art show in the state that year. This is something that people are attracted to. I am going to form a permanent museum in northern Nevada, which I think can rival what's happening in Las Vegas. It'll be done in a different way, treated as artwork. Beyond that, I want to do a living museum in the community for things that are in the community that are still up, that are always going to be there. And so I plan on continuing to do things like tours, which would, and Last Chance Joe would of course be on any tour, to get people back downtown, get them more familiar with Sparks. And then also I plan on doing some books about not only neon but also this type of Americana in Nevada, and this would obviously be something that I would talk about. And so I just really think that Last Chance Joe is worth saving. This is interesting because when I saw the way I work is that whenever I see any news articles about something closing, I always instantly contact the owners to see if things can be saved. I looked at Last Chance Joe. I went over there several times, and I just racked my brain as to how I could possibly save this. I saw the 36 feet tall. The plaque down there explains how hard it was just to get it there. So I'm thinking, how could I possibly do this? And I sadly was going to walk away from it. And then I was contacted by Councilperson Ratty, and I was really excited about the possibility that it could be saved. And so I sincerely hope that that he will remain in Sparks.
Thanks, Will. Any questions for Will? Okay. Thanks. Anyone else? Have no other cards. Okay. Let's bring it back to council for discussion. Ms. Ratty?
So, and then I also hopefully had the opportunity to read. I tried to forward, a lot of the letters were coming directly to me, so I tried last night and yesterday to forward as many of those to you as possible. So I'm hoping we'll find a way. We've found a way to do other things that came before us, funding the senior center, doing things that just need to be done because they're right for the community. I'd be interested to hear your feedback. This has all been moving very quickly because, again, that's how historic preservation tends to happen, that you get a little bit of notice to save it. And so I do think it's a unique opportunity and time to do the right thing. And $60,000 in the world of historic preservation, while it certainly impacts our electrical and HVAC projects, and I understand that, it's actually a very small amount of money in terms of preserving your past. And we have, over the recession, needed to walk away from our Historic Preservation Committee and some of the things that we were trying to do pre-recession to be more proactive. So I would hate for us to lose this one opportunity in time because we're so lean at this moment. This moment shall pass, and the city of Sparks will be back, and it will be strong. And so let's not lose it during this challenging time. So I'll leave it at that and see where you all would like to go.
Mr. Lawson.
Well, I personally am going to support it. Obviously, working for YESCO, we've done a lot of sign preservation. And the two signs that Mr. Carey mentioned, we actually built, and we just recently restored the one in Fallon, too. We chose not to bid this project, and this is where my concern comes in, is because of the fragility of that sign, it can be very easily destroyed. So is there some type of contingency in this, that if the sign falls apart when it comes off the wall, that somebody's going to be responsible for it? Because that was our reason for not bidding it. We were afraid to handle it.
Handle it.
Dr. Brian Kaysen, Acting Capital Projects Manager. I was basically the one that put together the little informal quote for this project. With the timeline of trying to get that together, I basically had a week or so to get everything together, so I left a lot of things up to the contractor. In the informal quote, I essentially said any damage that's currently on Last Chance Joe, because if you look close to it, there's some spots that need to be repaired right now. That, along with while they move it, if there's any damage, it needs to be whenever they're done with the project and walk away, it needs to be repaired and in good shape. And I mean, that doesn't mean painting the whole thing, but it means any little spots that are broken or damaged where the shell needs to be repaired and replaced.
Yeah, that's my concern.
Yeah, and so it's on the contractor. It
ends up over there not in 3 pieces, but 30 pieces.
Yeah. So basically the project it's up to the contractor to make sure when they walk away from that project, it is whole and looks nice. Yeah. What happens after that, I don't know. I tried to put a fence around it and everything to protect it, but who knows what may happen. It's in a little bit more, in an area where people walk by a lot and things like that, so there may be could be some things that may happen to it in the future. I don't know.
That was my next, so it's mounting lower on the parking garage or higher?
I've got it on a pedestal that's about 2 feet high, which I believe is pretty close to what it is right now. Is it higher? I can't remember. But right now, I've got it at 2 feet above. The problem going too high with it is the parking garage is actually lower than you think. The Last Chance Joe is going to sit above the parking garage, and then there's opportunity for people to get above it and throw things on it and do things like that. So that's why I chose not to go quite so high with the pedestal.
Well, I'm going to support it, and I agree with Julia. $60,000 isn't that much money to preserve some history, but I'm very concerned about moving of the sign and keeping it together.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will not support this, and I'll tell you why. We just passed, we raised our franchise fees to the 8% for more revenue, and we also raised our property taxes in the city of Sparks to raise more revenue, and then we want to take money out of the general fund and against a project that the money's already allotted for to do this work. Now, the doctor's idea of storing it is fine with me, or I wouldn't mind giving it more time to raise money and let the public put up the money for this, but I can't support taking $60,000 out of the general fund. I'm sorry.
Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Last month, we had a staff and council retreat in which staff stood right here in front of me and said, that we need to have tax increases, we don't have enough money to fund the city of Sparks next year. We have to lay people off. 30 days ago. And now we sit here and say that let's find $60,000 for something that's not in the budget on something we don't own because we want to restore, we want a historic preservation. I ask, what is our fundamental responsibility to the citizens? I opposed raising taxes because I felt we still had some things we could do in the budget. I'm very opposed to raising taxes, and before you even ink is dry, in fact, those taxes aren't even done yet, we're going to vote on them in another 2 weeks, and say, we got a special project here we want to spend $60,000 for. 2 more areas that I would like to go ahead and address. Supposedly, this is a new thing, that it's new to the community that Last Chance Joe was going to be taken off. I've been around here for 13 years in redevelopment. Nugget's been made very clear that that was not part of their rehabilitation plans on that building. Unfortunately, they didn't do it in the last 10 years. That project's been doomed to go for a long, long time. Also in redevelopment, I heard the comments that Last Chance Joe drives tourism to the city of Sparks. So we're fortunate enough to have everything on computers, so I did a Google search of Last Chance Joe. Top came out, Sparks, Nevada, Last Chance Joe, Roadside of America. I click on it. It's a group, it's a road group that travels around the country. Last Chance Joe is on their site. 0 comments. 0 comments. Next is Last Chance Joe, Sparks, Nevada by Road Trippers. Another group that travels around the country at things. 0 comments. Third, Last Chance Joe, Nugget Casino Motor Lodge is a Flickr. The last post, someone posted a picture of Last Chance Joe, was December 10th, 2010. Now where it gets real exciting is eBay. eBay has several postings of Last Chance Joe where people want to liquidate their merchandise of Last Chance Joe. So if we're here, and then it gets into some really strange stuff. And again, every website I looked at, not one comment. In 13 years of working in redevelopment, builders and developers all over that came across this country, there has been a theme with Last Chance Joe. It was not in their plans. In fact, if you look at some of the minutes of the meeting, Last Chance Joe had to go if they were even going to come into this town to go ahead and do development. It was not something that was important. And so I appreciate the opportunity to save Last Chance Joe. I appreciate everybody's comments. But a little bit of research shows that there's very few people that this is important to. And I think to take $60,000 of taxpayers' money after we have to raise taxes because we can't afford the services for next year to the tune of $700,000, and to say that 9% of that money we can go ahead and dissipate right off the bat because it's important to the city. And I would say we have a fundamental problem when it comes to doing budgets. Extreme fundamental problem. I can't support this.
Okay. Me, on the other hand, I know it doesn't bring tourists. Last Chance Joe has nothing to do with bringing tourism here. Being one of the 2, I guess, that's lived here all my life, never having lived here since 1957 without Last Chance Joe, kind of special place in my heart. $60,000, a lot of money. I agree with that, but it's something that's been here a long time, and it's something that maybe I think we should keep. We should have Last Chance Joe here. That's my feeling. $60,000, again, not a lot of money. Whether we spend this $60 now or $60,000 now or we don't, we're still going to have to raise taxes. That's going to happen. And I know this city, and I know the way we budget. We're always managed to squeeze a few more bucks out of our budget to do things like this that come up. Is this the most important thing in the world? Probably not. Is it important to the fact that it's a part of our heritage? Been there almost half of the time that the city's been incorporated, over 50 years. It was built in 1952 in Los Angeles, brought here in 1957. Our city was incorporated in 1905, so it's been almost half of the time that Last Chance Joe's been here in the city. So I can see this is not going to get supported, but from my view, I think it should be supported. $60,000 is not that huge of amount of money. I looked on Google too. I Googled Last Chance Joe, and Last Chance Joe is not bringing a lot of people to town. I can guarantee you that. Anybody that thinks that's the case is dreaming. But here again, once Last Chance Joe goes, Last Chance Joe's gone forever, and we never see him again. So, Ms. Ratty.
So, and I also Googled, and I agree with that with the exception of I've been watching eBay for the last month, and people aren't just trying to unload Last Chance Joe memorabilia, they are also purchasing Last Chance Joe memorabilia. There's a swift trade in Last Chance Joe mugs and Last Chance Joe postcards, and I actually missed out on, really wanted, but wasn't quick enough on the draw. Did you get it? Quick enough on the draw? Okay. On Last Chance Joe figurine, still in its original package. So, and it sold in a very quick period of time. So, if that's an indicator of interest in Last Chance Joe, they are not only trying to unload, they are also trying to pick it up. I see it as well. I'd like to go ahead and make a motion and just see how it goes, because I'm thinking that perhaps Councilman Smith has been compelled by sitting next to the mayor and his heartfelt comments. So I'm going to give it a shot. I'd like to move to approve to award a construction contract to Houston Smith Construction in the amount of $59,200.
Do we have a second for discussion? Mr. Lawson.
Being the only one that spoke in favor.
Thank you, Ed.
Mr. Schmidt, questions?
I think it's very, very important to make sure we make a distinguish between capitalism and a artwork. When it comes to capitalism, the reason why Last Chance souvenirs are going up in value is because Last Chance Joe is his chances have run on out, and capitalism is going to drive that price on up. Just because people are out there buying it to be saying, I love the art world, is probably a little stretch of the imagination, and those who are selling are doing it because prices are going up. Supply and demand.
And I will absolutely concede I do not see this as an economic development or redevelopment strategy. I see this as a historic preservation strategy.
Yeah, obviously. Okay, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, please vote. 2-2, so it goes as a no, right, Chet? Same as technical? Okay.
Nothing happened, yeah.
Go
I have a
ahead, Judy.
second motion I'd like to make.
Okay, go ahead.
So then I'd like the council to consider, because I think there's been some good testimony here, that perhaps this needs to be partially at least a community project. I think $60,000 to raise in the short period of time that it needs to be raised is probably too big of a lift. But what I'd like the city council to consider is a match. And so if the city council would consider the first $30,000 to save Last Chance Joe, then I will commit to working with the community members to raise the second $30,000 so that it truly can be a community project, and we'll pitch it as a sesquicentennial heritage project and get it done. So I will make that motion, that the city do the first $30,000 and allow the community to raise the second half. And I'll say that James Kavanaugh, which is why my handsome and very supportive and lovely husband is here today, that James and I would be willing to put in the first $1,000.
I think that would be appropriate to bring back at another city council meeting, because that particular motion dramatically changes the context of what's been agendized.
How so?
Well, this has to do with a possible award to a construction contract, and it's now morphed into a let's get together for a community project under a completely different name that the city of Sparks really doesn't have anything to do with. So I think that the citizenry being advised of a motion and an agenda item of that nature, you may get a lot more support from the community. Not that that's, from a legal standpoint, why I've got a problem with this motion.
problem with the motion is that it doesn't even resemble that being originally put on the agenda.
So let me try something that might assuage the legal challenge, and then disagree with you a little bit that I think to raise the money, with my background in nonprofit management, having the lead gift makes a huge difference. So if the motion is, I move to approve to award a construction contract to Houston Smith in the amount of $59,200 with a contingency that we have to raise the additional $30,000. It's still awarding a contract, we just wouldn't award the contract until that $30,000 is in hand. Because we don't have a lot of time.
That's
is my
good.
concern. You like it?
Okay, Mr. City Attorney,
Go ahead.
I believe you're in violation of state law. State law is very, very clear that when you issue a contract, the money will be in the bank and not in any trust or anything else like that. It has to be 100% in your control. Every single contract, the money has to be outlined in the budget, and it has to be in your possession. And I believe by doing that, by awarding a contract but only funding half of it, you are in violation of state law.
Well, you both have pretty good points, but the problem is that I have is contractual. We're looking at a contract now. We're looking at particular funds. You've dramatically changed the contract. The contracting party, the construction company, is, I think it's being put at a severe disadvantage with these types of conditions being put upon it at the last minute. We either have the money or we don't. If we have the money, it's up to the City Council's prerogative to make a decision as to whether or not to commit those funds at this point in time. But I don't think you can change the terms and conditions of a contract so drastically simply by amending the motion.
So willing to give in, and since I wasn't on the winning side of the motion, Ron Smith, would you be willing to ask for it to be agendized again at the next council meeting?
Well, I think there's no prevailing side here, so I think you can ask for an agenda. You can ask for an agenda item that's different than the one we have today.
Absolutely, and that was my concern with.
So you can ask for what I think you can ask for what you're talking about.
Okay, so we would ask, the agenda item would just be the match at the next council
Yes.
meeting, and then we'll do the contract at a future council meeting.
Because it's different than
What
what you're
money
talking
is.
about now.
Okay, I'm fair with that. So then I would ask that the question of the city contributing the first $30,000 be put on the next council agenda meeting. We can do that under the...
You can do that at any time. The city manager is feverishly writing, so I know he's thinking about that. But we have some more questions. Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I assume by the conversation before is that the city of Sparks is taking the lead on this. Is that correct?
So I could not come up with, nor do I think staff could come up with, although again, it did happen very, very quickly, a way that the city is not involved in this because we are attaching it to a city facility and we are making modifications to a city facility to be able to install it. So that's the city's involvement.
And I understand, but, right now, there is no other agency that's lead agency. The city of Sparks has done the work. We've asked for the bids. We've done all the studies. We're getting everything. There's not, Sierra Arts Foundation is not a foundation out here taking the lead on this. Our staff time is 100% involved in this.
So I can give you a similar example of how it would work. The Sparks SMS Compassion Fund that was set up for the Sparks shooting. So if we were going to do this, what I would do is I would ask the city, at this next agenda item, I would ask the city to approve a relationship with the Community Foundation of Western Nevada that would serve as the vehicle for accepting the donations so that those who chose to donate would get the benefit of a charitable tax deduction. The activity qualifies as charitable and historic preservation is clearly charitable. But the foundation would make the contribution to the city to be able to pay the contractor.
And with that scenario in mind, I believe that you also fall into play the donation to the city's rules that this board had set out, that if all of those donations become discretionary for review from the city council. And so you can't make the motion to do half until you have your contributors in place.
I think we've established that. So the next agenda item would be all about the contributions and accepting the contributions.
Not how much we do, it's just that the contributions have to be on the table. And then I think the issue that Mr. Lawson had, and I believe the next lowest contractor was almost $50,000 more, is that correct?
Yes.
So I think the liability issue of it has to extremely be looked at, and who's paying the policy to go ahead and make sure this thing is put back together if it doesn't get transported properly. I know to do a bid like this for 1 week is pushing it, and I don't want to see us flushing $60,000 down a hole because we didn't have all of our ducks lined up.
Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I will support is to pull this off the agenda until it's ready to be moved and privately raise the funds to move them and store them. The city of Sparks can put them in their yard. And that way, if it's a couple $1,000s to get him off the wall and he falls apart, it's over because we're not going to put any more money into it. I don't want to okay a contract for $60,000 or $30,000 and they go to move it and it starts falling apart. We can't afford it right now, but we can store it. If it comes apart in one piece, put it back in the yard until we can do it. That's what I'll support. I'm not making that motion. I'm just saying for next month.
Okay.
Is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Lawson?
And I just want to say that 30,000 or whatever the difference is. I mean, if you raise 50,000, Sparks will kick in the 10. Well, you never know. There's some benefactors out there.
Go ahead, Neil.
I see one sitting in the audience out here.
Go ahead, Neil.
Look at the wall.
Time is of the essence here.
Yeah.
We received the bids on April 17th. It was done informally, so we don't have a, specific language that says this bid is good for, typically we put in 60 days. The bid could be good from anywhere from 30 days to 90 days. It's a follow-up conversation that it sounds like we're going to need to have with the contractor to see if that's a price he's willing to guarantee for a while we attempt to raise these funds. And now, if I heard you correctly, Mr. Smith, we're talking about a change in what we've asked the contractor to bid for. Because there hasn't been any contemplation of, let's take Last Chance Joe down and stick them in the yard. So
The doctor suggested that, and I thought it was a good idea. I would say don't issue the contract. Issue a new contract if they can afford it, just to take them down and move them over there, and not to reinstall them anywhere. And in the process, because of the concerns Mr. Lawson had, it falls apart when they're trying to take it down, which is a probability, then we don't have to worry about it anymore because we're not going to put, back together again. All the king's horses.
Empty.
Yeah. That's what I'll support.
Okay.
Because 30,000 is no different than 60,000. We don't have the money for this project.
Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know we did an informal bid. Informal bids, a lot of things happen on with a lot of discussion, verbal discussion, and not written documentation. Has anybody looked at this thing and says it can be moved?
Brian, can you speak to that?
As a structural engineer, issued a report saying this thing is structurally sound, can be moved and reinstalled.
Yes, I mean, the actual structure of it is fine. It's the shell that would be the problem. I mean, a shell is, I believe, pretty brittle, and that would be the problem. I mean, basically, it's got basically chicken wire as kind of the surface that holds everything together, and then it's supposedly some sort of plastic or something that they formed over the top of it, and that would be the problem, is whether that holds up or not.
I was involved in moving a dinosaur from into a museum in Winnemucca. It was a huge, huge project, and so much that everything is cast and boxed and shipped, and I mean it's a pretty involved thing. I know a dinosaur and Last Chance Joe are maybe two different composites of how they're made, but I would think as a contractor and as a city running the thing, we would want somebody saying, how is this thing going to be moved that it's not going to fall apart? I think, there's experts in this business. We just don't go out there and say, how much is it going to cost to cut this thing off the wall and move it across the street and build a 2-foot concrete thing to hold it on up? Oh, what's this going to do? I mean, I understand time is of an essence, but, there's things in the construction business you just don't do unless you got somebody saying there's a method of doing it, especially since this type of product's not moved all the time. Maybe Mr. Lawson in the sign business, there's somebody out there that's an expert that can come up and say, yeah, it's possible, but in order to do this, we need to do this, 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 and this to make it happen. I would think that would be a common sense route to take before you go cut something off the wall and have it fall down in front of you.
Ms. Reddy?
Yeah, I just think a couple things. We're trying to be cost effective, and so we didn't pay engineers, we didn't do any of those things because that costs money too. And we didn't pursue taking it off the wall and putting it in the yard because of 2 reasons. One, the farther you move it, the more potential for damage. But 2, all of the historical reports that talk about when Last Chance Joe arrived talk about closing down major arterials to be able to transport him through town. And so by keeping him in the Victorian Square area, you're removing a bunch of costly logistics around moving him from one part of town to another part of town. So that really was the thinking behind that, just again for your information.
Okay, Mr. Schmidt.
Just clarify the statement.
Moving on.
We have toxic materials here. Do we want to move? Well, why don't we want to move them through town?
Because he's big.
Yeah, but I mean,
That's it.
there's no chemicals or anything in here after nobody's okay. All right.
No chemicals. Thank you. Okay, I think we're done. I hope. Forgot what we came here for other than Last Chance Joe.
Last chance.
So something else you will request on the agenda?
I would just say, if you are watching this or you're in the audience and you have an interest in helping, please send me an email and we'll get it done.
Send an email with a check.
Checks would be nice as well. Thank you.
Millions of people out there.
Let's move on to 6.5, consideration of possible action to approve final plan development, Kylie Ranch North Phase 6. Who's doing this? Karen.
Trying to get through the crowds leaving. Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm Karen Melby, Senior Planner. Before you today is a final plan development handbook for Kylie Ranch North Phase 6. This is the 6th handbook that we've reviewed for this Kylie Ranch North plan development hence the 6th phase. It is consistent of this phase here. Here is Pyramid, and this is Sparks Boulevard. The outline here in red outlines the Kylie North Ranch plan development. The dashed line here, this is the whole plan development, and the dashed line here represents the 115 acres for Phase 6. Staff has reviewed this and found it to be in substantial conformance with the tentative handbook, so Planning Commission and staff are recommending approval of this final handbook. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Karen? Questions for the applicant? Mr. Schmidt.
Mr. Mayor, I'm ready to make a motion on this. The only thing I have for Karen and Kylie, this has been an important project to the city of Sparks from day one, and I think that the majority of the people on the council still support this project and its concept and everything else like that. With all the changes and everything, there were some other changes that came to light this weekend as far as some ownership of some properties and everything else like that. Would it be possible in the future to sit down and kind of just brief the entire council on where Kylie Ranch is at as a whole? Where different pieces of property they've been sold to other people and things like that, and just what we can expect from Kylie Ranch. I think that the council is very much in favor of the project in a whole, just to make sure that there's any changes that has happening on ownership, on different parcels and things like that. Council's aware those are happening, because I had a call from somebody who said that they owned a piece of property in Kylie Ranch, and I didn't know it. And it wasn't a big deal. I just think that let's regain the momentum with Kylie Ranch. If that's what I guess I'm putting on it, is that we had some good momentum with Kylie Ranch. We're coming out of the recession. This is an important part for the long-term financial commitment for the city. And if we get a chance just to have a kind of like an update of Kylie Ranch where we're at, because it is such a big part of our community. So.
We would be glad to do an informational presentation on that for
Yeah,
you.
and it doesn't, and at a meeting in a couple of months, it's a light meeting, we don't have anything much going on, we can do that. But I would like to make a motion to approve PCN 14008 as final draft in substantial compliance with the City of Sparks action to tentative approval of Kylie Ranch North Plan Development Handbook and the facts supporting these findings as set forth in the staff, and thanking Kylie Ranch for all their commitment of going forward with things. Appreciate it.
Mr. Lawson.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Schmidt, seconded by Councilman Lawson to approve 6.5 PCN 14008. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Thanks, folks. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Lois. Appreciate it. 6.6, Steve, you're going to do, can you do 6.6, 6.7 together, and then we can vote individually? So 6.6, presentation, discussion, potential approval of Resolution 3256 regarding ratifying the goal of regional cooperation, and 6.7 is Resolution number 3257, ratifying the Economic Development Authority of Western Nevada being the one strong voice for economic development. Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Steve Driscoll, City Manager, for the record. These are items that are directly related to a summit that was conducted last month, for which the City of Sparks Council did not have a quorum. There was various presentations made by IBM and others related to the Smarter Cities, now called Smarter Regions project, where we're looking at working together with various agencies, everything from the elected boards for the three major governments to education to transportation and to corporate entities. And so the two items that you have before you in 6.6, what we're really looking there is to take a hard look at the governance and to be able to provide direction and drive ourselves forward in the concepts of working together as a single unit. This resolution was passed by all of the entities that had a quorum at the summit. Reno is in the process of updating it. They didn't quite do theirs correctly, so they have to redo the topic a little bit, but the topic is good for us. It's complete. I believe that quite a few of you have been present for some of the discussions and some of the background from that standpoint. So that's item 6.6. And so then on the 6.7 is taking the regionalization one step farther. In previous action by the state through the legislature and focusing on economic development, it was determined that if we had some single entities that were kind of serving as the face of a particular region, that would be stronger than having lots of smaller agencies. And it was determined with the City of Sparks, Washoe County, and City of Reno, and the governor's office and his economic folks, that EDON should be the representative for this part of northern Nevada, especially concentrating on the I-80 corridor and the valley. And so item 6.7 is just looking for confirmation through the resolution that regionally we are agreeing that the EDON would speak on our behalf, and we would work with EDON on economic opportunity that would drive jobs and future opportunities for the region. So with that, Mr. Mayor, we're just basically looking for the council to consider these two items and determine whether they would like to support the regional action, which has been supported by those members in the summit last month.
Questions, Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Driscoll, I almost called Joe Driscoll.
Yes, sir.
First of all, we already are in, we pay EDON to represent us. What's the difference between what they want them to do now?
There's nothing there's no financial change to what we're doing. It's really just a matter of us agreeing between all of the partners to kind of focus things through EDON and to not, for the corridor for this valley, even getting almost out to Trick, if you will, and the things that are going on in Story County, and using that as kind of a single face. So that
But we do that now.
We do it now. That part of it is really the easiest of things.
Right.
It's just confirming what we're already doing and being stronger about it. So I don't, in my role as the executive team, I don't see it being different. I see it as just being a good way so that the outside looking in can see that we're working together as a team.
Put it in writing.
Yep.
Okay, and I just wanted some confirmation on that. The real one, 6.6, it looks like they're adding 3 or 4 layers of committees and government. Talk to me about that.
Okay. In item 6.6, really the flow chart that's attached to the staff report is really a main focus. When we started talking about some governance, if you will, this is the final page. There's just an awful lot going on, and we as a region haven't always gotten along, I guess is probably a good term for when we're trying to do things as a single unit. We've struggled with merger talks and consolidation talks, and governance has always been the main component as to who controls what they're responsible for. Part of what the IBM perspective is, when businesses come and look at this valley, they see one valley. They don't see 2 cities, an unincorporated county government. They don't see a totally differently governed transportation authority. They just see one valley that has resources, and that it's someplace where they're concerned about an education system that meets their needs. They're concerned about a workforce that meets their needs. They're concerned about an ability to put a footprint into an area that meets zoning codes and can do that. And so for us to work together and to drive some things in the future, it was determined through IBM's consulting that we needed to do a better job of being one region and to being able to work together. And by doing that, it was really kind of insisting on taking these various governance pieces, having them agree to work together towards some goals and objectives. So it's bringing in the education K-12 and also education secondary, and having it meeting with the governmental entities as well as economic drivers to say, what are we going to need in the next few years, and have our education system work forward. We've not done that in the past. So this was a way for the different elected bodies to not get excited about someone trying to tell them what to do, but voluntarily agreeing to work towards some goals and objectives that have been identified. There were 5 major goals. This was one of the major goals on top of the economic piece of agreeing to come to the table and work. And so the reason there's a lot of layers is there's policy that needs to come through, and we need to get the policymakers together and have them direct some policy from a regional standpoint. Then the management, the senior management team, at my level, if you will, the different managers from the different functions, as you have something, is being given direction by the policymakers to then go make things happen that have been agreed to. And then the layers that go below that is tapping the sources of the folks that will really get the work done at the various levels, going from a very high senior level into mid-managers and or to subject matter experts. And so this is really designed to be kind of memorializing what we believe is necessary from a volunteer basis to get along, to work toward it, to try to meet the 5 goals that IBM's consultants brought to us 4 to 6 months ago.
How does the shared federal framework come into this? That's exactly what we're doing.
It's not incompatible with what's going on here. So from a standpoint of bringing in infrastructure or bringing additional dollars to something specific that helps with economic development, it's all part of the same piece. So it's not disjunctive from what we're talking about here.
Okay, I just have one last comment. Is there any charge for this?
There's no specific costs that are related to this as it goes. Obviously, as we develop certain programs, let's say we decided we wanted to concentrate and do a greater effort in economic development, that may mean that the partners might need to come up with some extra money for EDON, but it would be something would be agreed to. There's no budget that's isolated for it now. You are spending staff time, and you are spending your time. And there is intrinsic value in both of those, and depending on what assignments we get, staff time can be significant. At this point, it's not been, but it could easily become that way.
Well, my concern is that there's no charge now, but IBM is in the business of selling computers and other technical knowledge, and there's going to be charges coming down the road.
Their goal is not secret.
It's not free.
That they're doing certain pieces, and there was kind of a grant to kind of pay for some of the upfront stuff, and they're doing a whole bunch of it because it's an investment opportunity for them, and they're hoping as we work through and we develop technological solutions that we will be looking to them to partner with to utilize their equipment. City of Sparks is not an IBM shop. So for us to do anything that would relate to that, that would be of major significance, and I don't know that we would necessarily get on board. The other two major entities in the valley are also not IBM shops. So this is an investment opportunity for them. They're partnering with us, and they're hoping that goodwill will eventually turn into dollars to their bottom line, and that's, I don't think we're kidding ourselves, so we don't believe that.
Thank you.
Mr. Lawson.
Well, I haven't been involved with this from the beginning through being on the board of directors with EDON. I think it's a great idea. It's really is getting some tread and moving forward. And I think the City of Sparks needs to be involved with that. Because really, when it really comes down to it and a business moves to our area, it doesn't matter if the business is in Sparks or Reno or Washoe County or even at Trick. They got to live somewhere. And then more than likely will come live with us. And that's where our community needs to know what it is. And we are more of a bedroom-type community. We have great schools, great parks, and great roads and all that part of it. So I don't really care if they work out at Trick or they work in South Meadows. They come to and live with us in Sparks. That's what it's all about. And part of that problem that we've had in the past where, we butted heads with each other, being the new guy on the block in 2010, it was very evident. I'm starting to see some of those walls come down as new relationships are being formed between newly elected officials that will benefit this region going way into the future. So I'm a real big supporter of this. From the word go, it looked like it was pretty more complicated than it was, but really all it is getting all the people in the room together to agree that we're going to do something. And just so puts your mind at ease a little bit too, Ron, is there's no talk of mergers. There's no talk of, anything that we're going to be forced to do. Sparks retains its autonomy, and we get to do what we want to do. But we need to look at it from a regional perspective and not just in our own backyard. So that's what I think this program does.
Yeah, I think this kind of memorializes and puts into writing what we're probably already doing. I know we're doing a lot of this stuff already, but there's no approval or denial authority that these bodies have as far as anything that goes on in Sparks or Reno and Washoe County. They don't have the authority to turn down one of our projects or do any of that thing. I think it just memorializes and puts it out to the public that we're trying to get together and do something as a region and work on it as a region. Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree. I think with all the comments, I think it's very important to be looking at some of these issues on a different level in light of what we've gone through, the economic conditions. My question is there any component of this in the education of tax structures?
Mr. Schmidt, Steve Driscoll, City Manager, for the record. I'm not aware from the briefings that I've been involved in to this point, because I'm getting up to speed on it, that part is a discussion. There is a concern in general about the complexity of the taxing structure, but one of the things that is helping us, that when we look at Nevada itself, that Nevada is currently in the bottom 5 of a good list for a change, where it's the lowest tax structure for all things related to a business. So while we haven't got a lot of bang for our buck with California being in the top 5, there's some concern, but a lot of the effort is to get the word out, to work with it, to show that we can do some things. Having the ability to call up the president of the university and talk about some potential program changes, or get DRI on board to show the technology that they have available, is really a lot of what we're doing, is kind of starting to toot our horn in some ways. Tax structure may need to change. That would be something that would have to get discussed if it became a roadblock.
My concern, as the endeavor that I took on here a couple of months ago, I'm meeting on a lot of people and talking to a lot of people about taxes, and it's quite apparent that from the business community, from state legislatures to elected officials on all level across the state, that how taxes work in the state of Nevada are almost it is so difficult to understand that it's better not to even approach the subject and just have the grand idea, the big scheme on out there, and then hoping that it's all going to work out in the tax structure. And there's direct conflicts here between your tax structure of the state and your goals that you have outlined in the regional partnership thing. And so I guess before you get down the road too far, I'd start a real heavy tax education campaign on exactly, when you say you're going to do this, what does that mean to your community or to the region or to the state or to the segments? Because I think most people don't have an idea of how a dollar flows to this community and what happens to it. And so I would make that suggestion, that before you get running too much, I would sure have some tax issues.
Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Schmidt, as the policymakers of that matrix, we'll certainly be willing to support you and others in that conversation, because you are not saying anything to your staff that is not known very, very well. So we'll be looking forward to that support.
And please, I know you guys understand this. I'm just saying for the general public and for policymakers throughout our region, that before you do this, I would sure understand what you're saying is how it affects tax policies in the future of your communities.
Mr. Lawson.
Yeah, I think you might be reading more into this than what it is. I think the bottom line is,
way more.
It's just an agreement that we're going to cooperate with everyone else, and making regional planning the central hub for information, which is a fair and perfect identity for me, because there's no slant for one entity or the other. It's about the region. If you ask people where Reno is, they don't know where Reno. They definitely don't know where Sparks is. I mean, I don't know how many people from the East Coast think that we are, I'll just drive from Las Vegas and come see you. Well, yeah, that's going to be an 8-hour trip for you, sir. It's not, we're not right next to Las Vegas. So just that identity of setting ourselves up to, as a region, we have something to offer. But we're not giving anything away. We're not changing the tax structure. We're just providing information. So far, regional planning has become partners with NV Energy to provide information. And also, I believe we're in the process of working with AT&T. So if you're looking at a piece of property to build a manufacturing plant on, we'll be able to tell you what phone service you have, what your power service is, what your water, and what your sewage is, all in one-stop shopping. Now, where you have to go do that today is to go to 4 different places to find that information. Do it all in one place. That makes us more friendly to those businesses. And when business recruitment companies or business locator companies are looking for a place to go, they're looking for places to eliminate. So if you're on the top 10 list and they make a phone call and they just want to know about this parcel, how much electricity do I have on it? And, oh, we don't have that, call the power company. Oh, we don't have that, call the water company. Oh, we don't have that, call, you're eliminated. So this, all it is just trying to get our region together where we're not stepping on our own toes to provide information. Other than that, there's no sinister plot here to tax you or, take away your autonomy.
That's right.
Yeah, again, I think we're probably making this far more complicated than it needs to be. I do think, while most of what's in here is symbolic, it's important. And it's I'm sure you guys are all familiar with the movie Moneyball and Billy Beane and what he did with the Oakland A's. And the idea behind that was here you had the team with the lowest budget in the league that used data to make smart decisions and therefore get a better outcome. So Smart Cities is about using data more effectively, and it's about understanding the realization that the communities that have been the most effective in changing their outcomes are those that have channeled community will to a couple of priorities. That's what this is about. Use data to make smart decisions and get the whole team on the same page to be cheerleaders for the region, to be making smart decisions about where we're investing so that we're not, and in this case, Sparks, Reno, Washoe County, RTC, UNR, DRI, TMCC, all going in 5 different directions instead of channeling all that community effort to the highest outcomes. So take the data, make good decisions, get everybody on the same page. So it's relatively symbolic. It's worked in communities that have equally complex and sometimes far more laden tax structures than ours does. And it really is just about a commitment to say we want to do something differently in the region. It's as simple as that. So I can easily be behind making smart decisions based on data and getting on the same page that we do the most important investments in our community.
Okay, trying to stick with being part of the smart cities, I'm looking for a motion.
Oh, Ed, you've been most involved with this. Would you like to?
All right, what are we doing, 6-6?
Please.
Start with that one. I'm going to make a motion.
Go ahead.
Let me get to it. I move to approve resolution number 3256, ratifying the goal of regional cooperation regarding improving economic development outcomes and the new Smarter Regions governance model to achieve that goal.
Do you have a second? Ms. Ratty.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Lawson, seconded by Councilwoman Ratty to approve 6.6 as outlined by staff. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passed unanimously. 6.7, Mr. Lawson.
Okay. I move to approve resolution number 3257, ratifying that the Economic Development Authority of Western Nevada will be the region's one strong voice.
Do you have a second? Ms. Ratty.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Lawson, seconded by Councilwoman Ratty to approve 6.7 as outlined by staff. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. 6.8, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of resolution number 3258, directing the Washoe County Health District to establish and maintain a regional emergency medical services oversight program. Go ahead, Mr. Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Steve Driscoll, City Manager. For the record, this is basically a housekeeping idea or a housekeeping item. On February 10th, there was a concurrent meeting, and we discussed the REMSA franchise for providing ambulance service and emergency medical services with the region. As part of that, 2 resolutions came out of it. One was approving a principles of agreement related to drafting a new franchise agreement, and the second was approving a resolution that would drive an interlocal agreement between the Health Department, the City of Reno, City of Sparks, and Washoe County Health District for developing emergency medical oversight. In looking at the record, it appeared that while we did all the right things and we had the right intent, that we may not have had all the right words to actually direct staff to go do the interlocal agreement per your rules. So just on being on the safe side, what this is contemplating is for an agreement that your staff's been working on under best efforts, thinking we had proper permission. This is giving us permission to finish. The franchise agreement itself is in its final stages, and the interlocal agreement is right on its tail. So your staff has been doing what was contemplated. I just wanted to make the record more official.
Questions for Mr. Driscoll? Not looking for a motion. Ms. Ratty.
I move to adopt resolution number 3258.
Do you have a second? Mr. Smith.
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Ratty, seconded by Councilman Smith to approve resolution number 3258. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
6.9, consideration possible direction to initiate amendments to Title 9, Section 9.34.083, and Title 5, Section 5.08.2.020 regarding the vendor permitting process and other sections as necessary. Ms. Dominguez.
Good afternoon, Mayor Martini and council members. Tracy Dominguez, Parks and Recreation Director. Before you is a request to provide direction to the city manager to possibly change these two titles. Currently, the ordinance requires that everybody doing a business in Sparks must have a City of Sparks business license. As that relates to events, it's not been efficient or practicable, I guess. It's not been enforced. So staff would like to recommend some changes to allow a vendor permitting process that will be organized through the Parks and Recreation Department to streamline the process and hopefully gain some approximately $18,000 in revenue that we're not collecting currently on a business license. So one thing I'd like to let you know is that staff has informed all of the event producers twice, back in 2013 and once again in some workshops done today, this year. And so the producers are all fully aware of this coming online, and if this passes, they'll be okay with it. I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Questions for Tracy. Ron Smith.
Yeah, Tony Hawk.
Yeah, he's coming.
It's your birthday today, by the way.
It is?
Yeah.
How old am I?
I don't know. I didn't catch that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tracy, I'm not in favor of this. Is there anything we're doing for the people that show up with their buckets of flowers on Mother's Day? Because I know they don't have permits, I don't think, or licenses to sell.
That's not, I don't know what they do in enforcement for that.
Well, this is just making sure that somebody doing sales in the city of Sparks.
During special events.
This is, I'm sorry, this is
I know
just
this is
for
special
events.
events, but are we working on anything for?
I'm unaware. I'd have to check with.
I mean, it's almost impossible because they're here and gone, but.
It's tough. It's tough.
Yeah.
We've been working on that for quite a while, everything from firewood to flowers.
And blankets and everything.
And strawberries.
Yeah.
Strawberries.
Cherries.
Cherries.
And lights and
Okay,
don't
I didn't
know.
know if this was going to be included in something like that.
Not to my knowledge,
Okay.
no.
Thank you.
Steve, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, that is something that's handled by code enforcement. It is something that we've been working on, as Mr. Adams said. We do have a concerted effort on those holidays where those things go through, and then we do see them from time to time, and we work between ourselves, the police department, and the city attorney's office to try to make that go away. We get new bad actors every time, so it is something that your code enforcement team is working on. But it is more of a concerted effort than it's ever been in the past. So a lot of times they have to set up before we can get them to tear down. So thank you.
Put all your people out there in all these corners. Questions, anyone else? Ms. Ratty?
Just a quick comment on that. In the non-special events arena, we have by far the strictest rules of any city in the state, and I'm aware of this because of my role as the CEO of the Girl Scouts of the Sierra Nevada. The paperwork that we do for Sparks to be able to set up cookie booths is significantly more difficult than any other jurisdiction. So I would encourage us not to put more rules on. The problem is not the rules. The problem is the not good players not following the rules.
I think we need more stricter rules on Girl Scouts because they sell me too many cookies and I...
Boy Scouts.
Exactly, they're even worse. Okay, any other questions? Looking for a motion. Go ahead, Ron.
I move to approve, direct staff to prepare and bring forward amendments to Title 9, Section 9.34.083 and Title 5, Section 5.08.020 regarding the vendor permitting process and other sections as necessary.
Mr. Lawson.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Smith, seconded by Councilman Lawson to approve 6.9. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. 6.12, consideration and possible approval of Bill 2672, creating a 2014 Consolidated Tax Revenue Refunding Bond Ordinance of the City Council of Sparks, Nevada. Mr. Cronk.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I don't get to do this very often. Since the recession started, we haven't had a chance to refinance some of our bonds, but things are loosening up a little bit in the credit market, and we're actually getting a little some nibbles finally on some of the things. So what I have in front of you is actually an ordinance to refinance the C-Tax bonds, which we issued in 2007 by reducing the rate by a percentage point, and over the next 12 years until these mature in 2026, be able to save us about just under $600,000. So looking forward to doing this. We did, just because of the sensitivity, if you recall doing these in the past, it's very common to seek approval of these on a 4/5 instead of just a simple majority, for the timing and sensitivity of getting the deal done with interest rates as they are, so on and so forth. So with that, I'm ready to entertain any questions.
Mr. Cronk. Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jeff, just want to make sure, all we're doing is lowering the interest rate. We're not extending the due dates of these bonds.
No,
The due date is the same on it. And the $583,000 is not including the cost of reissuance.
Yes, on the first one. So no change on the maturity date. It's simply, lowering the interest rate. It's actually with our existing the finance investor. They're willing to just continue to hold it, but at a lower interest rate. So we're just basically re-amortizing, if you will, over the length of that same bond. And then the 583 includes the issuance cost.
It does include this, so we save 583 over 12 years.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Other questions? Okay, looking for a motion. Mr. Schmidt.
I move to approve Bill 2672, creating a 2014 Consolidated Tax Revenue Refunding Bond Ordinance authorizing the reissuance of the city's 2007 Consolidated Tax Revenue Refunding Bonds. And great job, Jeff. You can come here every week if you want to with stuff like that.
I'd love to.
Mr. Smith.
Usually you're Mr. Doom and Gloom.
Yeah.
I'll second the motion.
Don't do this often.
Moved by Councilman Schmidt, seconded by Councilman Smith to approve Bill number 2672. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. 6413 is the first reading.
Bill number 2673, an ordinance amending Title 20 of the Sparks Municipal Code, medical marijuana dispensaries, and providing other matters properly related thereto.
This is the first reading of Bill number 2673. The public hearing and second reading of this bill will be conducted at the regular City Council meeting on Tuesday, May 27, 2014. Now, did you want to say something, Mr. Barrett? Come on down, and then when you're done, if you'd please fill out one of our speaker cards.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for inviting me down. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, for your record, I am Chris Barrett. I'm here in support of the first reading of this ordinance. I would suggest that for your consideration of requiring, rather than a special use permit for this use, would be administrative review. That would help us and those who are fortunate to receive the licenses from the state to operate this, to get our doors open sooner and be able to pay fees and taxes to the city and the state. That would be consistent with the administrative review that you have required and approved for the cultivation and production facilities. We believe that's a rigorous review with all of your departments. I have attended every single one of these hearings, and through that process, there wasn't any, if minimal, response from the public and debate at the table. So, in order to be consistent with that and to get into business sooner, we would appreciate your consideration of that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions, Mr. Schmidt? Do you have a question?
Well, I just wanted to get a clarification before we vote on this in 2 weeks. That the last meeting we were at, and I apologize for not being here, was the approval of the zone in which these could go into. Now we're saying that once we approve that, we've got to have a special use permit on top of that. I believe this is what that's saying.
See, I didn't think they require special use permit if they rezoned it.
Everybody's jumping on that.
And that's why Chris brought it up.
Good afternoon, Karen Melby, Senior Planner. You're talking about for the dispensaries? The dispensaries would be allowed in the C2 zoning, which is our general commercial district, and then also in the TOD mixed-use commercial district, and then also in restricted areas within the industrial.
And do we or do we not have to have a special use permit? If someone comes and applied, they're within that district, do they have a special use permit?
For a dispensary, we are recommending that they have a special use permit. And the reason being that they were going to be customers coming with money and leaving with marijuana, and we felt that it was important that the neighbors realize that this use is coming in next door to them.
Okay, and can that dispensary be inside that district in which the growers are growing?
There are areas within the industrial area that dispensaries can be located.
And then have we made a clarification or a decision that the dispensary can or cannot be in the same building as the growing facility?
They can be co-located within the same building.
They can be in the same building? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, other questions? Is there a way, Karen, that Mr. Schmidt's talking about, or you're talking about, I'm sorry, about notifying the neighbors of what's going to be coming there? Is there another mechanism by which we can do this without us going through a special use permit?
We'd have to make a new application type to do that. Administrative review is an administrative review, which means it's reviewed by staff, including all of the different departments that would be reviewing it. So there is no public notice on that.
So is there a way to require a public notice during the administrative review that the applicant could be required to send out to the neighbors, letting them know what will be coming?
We would have to amend the code amendment that we just approved at the last city council, which didn't have public noticing for the administrative review. We'd have to amend that code.
Okay. Go ahead, Neil.
We would essentially create a new type of entitlement review. There would be an administrative review plus public noticing.
Okay.
If that's your direction.
Okay, just looking for options. More questions? Julia?
For me, I think it's more than just notification. I mean, certainly, I think businesses would appreciate knowing that it's coming in next door, but I think that special use permits give the city council discretion over whether or not it's appropriate use in that neighborhood. And yes, we have the broad zoning, but particularly for dispensaries, not for the other three production areas, I do believe that we need the opportunity to take public input from affected neighbors, and we need to have the discretion to decide whether that is still appropriate in that neighborhood. I want to make sure we don't muddy the water here and add a notification requirement to the other three categories, because most of those categories, I think those businesses are trying to be as discreet as possible and not let people know that that's what's moving into the neighborhood. And I think that that makes a lot of sense on a lot of reasons if the police department wants to comment, but I think that's what we're going for, is that they're relatively nondescript. Dispensaries is a completely different category. They're going to have the most traffic, they're going to have the cash transactions, and people walking away with a lot of cash, out with a lot of product, and I just think it's appropriate that neighbors have the opportunity to share what they're thinking with the council and have that actually affect an outcome. I think it would be really interesting to have a notification process that tells people there's a challenge and no path forward for then actually a decision to be made that would change the outcome. So personally, I'm in favor of keeping the special use permit process as part of the dispensary-only application process.
Mr. Smith?
So I'm a little confused here. If the grow facility is in an industrial center, they don't need a special use permit.
That's correct. They would get administrative review.
But once we add a dispensary in the same building, now they have to have a special use permit.
For the dispensary, yes.
And aren't all these zones in the industrial zone? They're not in a residential area?
The cultivation, production, and testing is only in the industrial area. That's correct.
And this dispensaries, I mean, if they go into the same area, they're not in a neighborhood.
That's correct. They're in either our general commercial district, which is not generally near residential, and then also in restricted areas, which is 3 intersections within the industrial area.
So you'd be notifying the other warehouses over there that were growing and selling marijuana? They already know that?
No, only a dispensary would be notified.
Well, I mean, the dispensary's in the same building, so somewhere you're going to, I can understand if you took the dispensary and put it in next to Smith's or something down there.
And certainly dispensaries can go, or are contemplated to go, in the C2 or general commercial zoning.
Okay.
Which could be in close proximity to many other types of uses.
But what if they choose and it's okay to go into the same building as the grow?
Then they're really going to be limited, if as proposed by staff, to 1,000 feet around any of those three major intersections. They're the only places in town you'd be able to co-locate, if it's passed as being proposed to you.
Okay. But we can look at that and see what we want to do, if we want to change that.
On the 27th is when we'll hold a public hearing and have the opportunity to make a decision and give us direction.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm just kind of follow up that question just a little bit. And I'll just ask, can you make this, that it's the same across the board for the whole thing? This is your district. This is what you're allowed to go in here. We won't have to worry about dispensaries next to a supermarket. Say all operations go inside this corridor downtown, or excuse me, in the industrial area. Can we do that?
You could. I think you will hear from your staff, most particularly your police department, on why they don't think that's a good idea. But yes, in terms of making choices about how to use the land within Sparks and how to regulate it, that is the council's purview.
I think for me, that I know that it all stays inside this district, and it's not going to be in the corner grocery store in my neighborhood. There's only going to be 2 dispensaries, correct?
That's what we are
2 dispensaries.
per law, unless we request more.
I mean, this entire business is isolated to this one zone, and that's it. It's not going to be anywhere else inside the city. And I would much rather be able to go through that and say that, this business is concentrated in the industrial and that's it, and the neighborhoods don't have to worry about it coming back on out.
And we will have a full presentation for you on the 27th. I think the root of the matter you've actually touched on in the industrial area with respect to dispensaries, and that is isolation, where you've got a large portion of that area that goes really quiet once the sun has gone down. People aren't down there routinely, and now you're contemplating putting in or allowing uses where people are carrying large amounts of cash and leaving with amounts of marijuana, and ripe for bad things to happen.
Take a ride along at midnight, you'll see a lot of things happening that you don't realize are happening right now. But I think it's inherently unfair to say to one group of business people that you don't have to go ahead and take and get a special use permit because we're giving you a zone for it. But everybody else, this same thing in your business, we want a special use permit to go do that. And so we could discuss this in 2 weeks, but I would really rather staff sit down and look at and say how to put this whole thing into a concentrated area where it's not going on anywhere else in town.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of council. Brian Allen, Chief of Police for the record. Staff has worked tirelessly over these various questions that you have proposed. One of the last things that I, as a police chief for public safety in general, is want a dispensary buried deep within our industrial area of the city, especially as the evening comes to a close and our area and our resources are usually drawn from the industrial area back into the core of the city where we deal with most of our influxes of things. We believe that through the administrative review process, we can maintain the safety and security of the cultivation centers, the lab testing procedures, or the production centers. But when you add the new element of a dispensary, and it's not along one of those major thoroughfares, and it may possibly be buried deeper into the industrial area, we're adding a component that, without additional staffing, draws a problem for the police department. So to build that into the industrial area, and we also heard from the various groups that we met with that putting the dispensaries deep within the industrial center is not a viable solution for their product either, because they want to have easier access, which actually is going to benefit the police department, where we have more patrol units, more eyes watching it, and access to those centers where we're dealing with the majority of the product and the cash. So having it actually out of the industrial area for the dispensaries is a benefit for the police department.
Okay. Mr. Reddy.
Well, and again, just on the side of special use permits for dispensaries because they do have different impacts. I don't see an issue of fairness. We do special use for all kinds of different impacts. In our industrial area, we've approved all kinds of, via special use permit, activities that are not industrial. And the one that pops to mind for me, of course, is volleyball facilities, soccer facilities, cheerleading facilities, and any number of churches for any number of faiths. And so, for me, the special use permit is about, okay, yeah, I'm not a church or I'm not a volleyball facility within 1,000 feet, but I'm within 1,200 feet of that facility, and is that still an appropriate place? So there's an opportunity for us to have that discretion and make sure that that's the case, because we do not have a pure industrial district anymore.
Well, I go back to, there's only two. And if they're in the correct zoning, why do we need to have a special use permit? I mean, are we going to turn them down because they're within 1,200 feet of a church? I don't know how we can do that. So the bottom line for me is there's only two. I don't see that special use permit is that big of a deal. So we'll talk about that at the next meeting, but for me, it's not a hill to die on. There's only two. Just got to remember that. Once the two are established, I don't see these guys changing businesses very often. So we expect to have a very long relationship with them.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Moving along to public hearings. 7.1, public hearing, consideration possible approval of fiscal year 14-15 Community Development Block Grant, CDBG and Home Consortium Annual Action Plan. Mr. George Graham, all dressed up here. Good to see you, George.
Yes. Thank you, Mayor, City Council. For the record, George Graham, Housing Specialist. And what I'm presenting for your consideration today is the annual action plan. This is the program year 5, the 5th year and final year of the current consolidated plan. And City of Sparks being an entitlement city, we have an allotment, annual allotment, and our allotment this year is $631,700 some dollars. And in addition to that, we have approximately $397,000 of previous year allocation that we're going to combine for approximately $1,229,400 some dollars as far as investment in the community, different areas, eligible areas within the community, including pedestrian improvements, housing, program administrative, continuum of care, several items under the CDBG eligible items. In addition, the Washington County Home Consortium, we have a development of a 45-unit affordable housing, senior housing, to take place at Lincoln, 4th Street and Lincoln Way Apartments, as included as part of this initiative. And we've complied with the 30-day public comment as necessary. April the 10th was the advertisement, and I believe that's all I have as far as overview of what I'd like to bring before for consideration of approval. And I'm prepared now to answer any questions.
Questions for George? Mr. Schmidt?
I'm sorry,
Yeah. Okay, this is a public hearing item. I'll open to the public. Anyone want to speak to this particular item? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, bring it back to council for action. Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve the proposed project funding allocations and to submit the program year 5, fiscal year 2014-15 annual action plan of the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Mr. Smith.
Second.
Moved by Councilman Schmidt, seconded by Councilman Smith to approve 7.1 as outlined by staff. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Passes unanimously. Thank you, George. Another
Thank
fine
you all.
job. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Comments from the public. Anyone want to speak under comments from the public? Comments from the city council and city manager. Mr. Smith? No?
No.
Mr. Driscoll?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have an announcement. Terms will expire for the following committees: June 30th, 2014, the Civil Service Commission, 2 members with 3-year terms each; Parks and Recreation Commission, 3 members with 3-year terms. Persons interested in serving on any of these committees should complete a community service application available from the city clerk's office. You may also apply online at the city's website, www.cityofsparks.us. Click on City Services on the webpage, then click on Volunteering, Get Involved, and then click on Fill Out City of Sparks Volunteer Application. Applications will be accepted until the close of business on May 30th of 2014. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else? Okay, seeing no further business, we're adjourned.